Good evening, everybody. How is everybody today? Can you hear me okay? Just want to make sure we've got a good connection before I start. If somebody in the chat could just let me know that everything is working, and then we can begin. So it's quite a heavy chat this evening. Going to be talking about Chris Watts, the closet misogynist. Okay, great. So I'm hearing that it's all clear. You can hear me fine. Okay, so this evening we're going to be taking a bit of a deep dive into Chris Watts, trying to get a slightly deeper understanding, perhaps, of what was going on in his mind all those years. And of course, this is just my opinion. I'm not a psychologist. It's just based on research and analyzing his behavior just from a personal perspective. So yeah, it's just opinion, but I'd love you guys to jump in the chats and give me your opinions. Let me know what you're thinking, if you agree, if you don't agree. If there's points that I've missed, just please add your voice. I'm hoping this will be a conversation that we can all join in. Hey, Elizabeth. Hey, Domingos. Hi. Thanks for joining us, guys. So yeah, tonight is going to be all about Chris Watts, the closet misogynist. We've had Easter and a lot of guys are still away, and I know some of my mods and some of my guys are off sick at the moment, so it's probably going to be less of us this evening, but hopefully as we get into this, a few more people will be able to jump on. I'm just going to put a couple of links out there, and hopefully we'll get a few more people to jump in. Otherwise, they'll have to catch up. Okay, so I really want to know, why does it seem that Chris Watts despises women? Why does it seem that he has a big, huge issue with women? And if we go back all the way, I'm really believing that he is a closet misogynist. And I'm using the word closet misogynist because I've always thought of Chris Watts as being a bit of a coward, and he isn't sort of out and proud. And it's very subtle, the way that he expresses his thoughts. And what he does, his kind of form of hate, it manifests itself through destabilization, and we see that in so many scenarios, and that's what I'd like to talk about today. One of the first huge red flags was for Shanann when she first was introduced to his family, and from day one there seemed to be tensions. Cindy Watts is somebody who very openly expresses her displeasure when things are not going where she believes they should go, and there seemed to be tensions from day one between the families when they tried to get together, and they were both strong alpha women. I think there was a lot of tension. When we look back to the engagement party, this is when things really started to get serious, and there was some serious manipulation by Chris, which could only have worsened the whole situation. He spent close to a month's salary on the engagement ring, and when he told his mother, I mean, why would he tell his mother? But anyway, he told his mother how much it cost, and that Shanann had sort of wanted this extravagant ring, that Shanann had actually gone along and helped select the ring. So he was stirring up some trouble there with his own mother. And basically, he then ran home and told his fiance that Cindy thought it was outrageous that they would waste all this money, a whole month's salary on a ring. So again, I don't think many people would do that, discuss things like the cost of a ring when he knows that there were already tensions between the two of them. And as we know, there were major problems with the actual engagement party itself. People weren't invited who Shanann had expressly wished to come, and there were issues with the food. So, you know, Chris knew that there was always something looming in the background between the two families, and especially between his mother and his fiance. If we go forwards, it really came to a head, and the problems between daughter-in-law and mother-in-law became so bad that Cindy and the family decided not to attend the wedding. This is quite a strong action to take. So from day one, Chris knew what could happen and how his actions could severely affect the family. He was exceptionally displeased with his mother, and they didn't actually speak for many months, and that things didn't really get back on track until it was announced that Bella, the pregnancy of Bella, and then the families decided to try to come together for the sake of the grandchildren. Hey, Kat, just seeing you jumping in here. Great to see you. Thank you so much. Yeah, we're just talking about Chris Watts, and I'm calling him a closet misogynist because he wasn't so brave that he would be out there. It was always very subtle and hidden. But yeah, his hatred of women. We're just talking about how he stirred up trouble with his mother and Shanann from day one. So yeah, basically, it was a ticking time bomb, this marriage, because obviously Shanann had this huge hurdle to get over, which was his family, and things were never ever right from day one. Although they all tried to make the best of it, Chris didn't actually speak to his mother on the phone that much, and they hardly saw each other. They would meet twice a year, so you know, there was not this huge closeness that she likes to make out. And Chris with his own sister, I mean, she never ever once visited her brother in Colorado. She'd never even met CC until the final holiday in North Carolina. So, you know, there wasn't this closeness that the Watts like to pretend. It didn't exist, basically. One thing that I've always really thought in my mind, Chris Watts said that the marriage was like walking on eggshells. I actually think it was Shanann who had to walk on eggshells. I can just imagine Chris giving her the cold shoulder, going down in his basement to do some work or work out or whatever, and take the dog for a walk. I can imagine that this constant need to praise Chris was because if she didn't, then he would sulk, give her the cold shoulder. So yeah, the whole eggshells, I always believe it was actually her. I'm just looking at some of the comments here. Yeah, so Cindy liked to blame Shanann. Yeah, there was no relationship between the families, and Chris could easily have seen his family more than he did. So, but yeah, I don't think there was that closeness on either side. Yeah, so I really feel that the eggshells was definitely Shanann. She realized that by praising Chris, she would get the very best out of him, and that he would go along with the thriving and everything that she wanted to kind of create that package of the perfect family for her social media, which at the end of the day, she was just selling a brand, selling a product. I mean, she needed to have that message. But I think it was, well, we've seen examples when Chris hasn't played along, when he's had his back to the camera and, you know, has been quite aloof and off. So he definitely, when he wanted to be awkward, he definitely could be. We then move to the family dynamic, as we've discussed, didn't really exist. So although Shanann gets the blame for everything, I don't think there was ever this closeness anyway. And what mother really punishes her son so much that she doesn't attend the wedding and breaks all contact, and they don't speak for quite some time? It's easy to blame Shanann, but there was obviously a very strange, surreal relationship between son and mother for that to have happened. What was the most shocking thing for me in this whole case was, in the final 6 weeks of her life, Chris Watts totally destroyed his wife. He gaslighted her, he lied to her, he manipulated her, he literally played her. He played with her mind. I mean, she was a wreck by the end of the 6 week period. The whole trip while she was away, it was absolute misery, because he was playing his games and he was telling her one thing and then doing another, and she was at absolute breaking point. We all remember that awful broken photo of Shanann sitting in her car that she sent to one of her friends. I mean, the woman looks totally destroyed because she couldn't make any sense of it, because when she asked her husband what was going on, he just denied it. And this to me is the sign of somebody who absolutely despised Shanann. I mean, he was trying to literally send her crazy with his manipulations. I'm just looking at some of the messages that Shanann was sending her friend, you know, the kind of things that she was saying. So he would say things like opposites attract, but this isn't working anymore. Her friend asked her if she looked through his phones to see what was going on, because obviously everybody suspected that he was having an affair, or there was some strangeness behind his actions. And Shanann just said, he's deleting messages from his dad, so I'm sure he's not that stupid, as in he wouldn't leave any messages visible. You know, he would have deleted them. Chris told me last night that he's scared to death about this third baby, and he's happy with just Bella and Celeste and doesn't want another. And then she was actually talking to Addie. Addie, he has changed. I don't know who he is. He hasn't touched me all week, kissed me, talked to me. So she just was utterly confused. I mean, they'd decided, obviously, to have the third child, and then suddenly it's like, he doesn't want, you know, the bunch of bananas on the fruit bowl. Suddenly he doesn't want the baby anymore. They must have absolutely screwed with her head. I'm just catching up here. Yeah, absolutely. He broke her and he loved how it felt. Yes, he got so much power from doing that. And then Elizabeth, yeah. I also think that's why the Watts don't do anything directly. They use other YouTube channels. Absolutely. They always do this. They have their little flying monkeys, as you said, who they send out. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kat's saying here, the final text, it was about going grocery shopping. What kind of, you know, vegetables did he want? So absolutely. It makes you see who he was walking on eggshells. So basically, just get back to some of the messages were so upsetting. Yeah, so I mean, just to feel such rejection from a husband who they'd always been quite intimate, and then suddenly he was snubbing her. And when she was asking what's going on, he just blamed it on work. Said he was very stressed with work, and he would miss FaceTimes with his children. On one occasion, Shanann tried him 10 times, and obviously he was out with NK or whatever. But yeah, she just was totally being gaslighted. Looking through here, her friend says to her, "What the hell changed in 6 weeks?" Shanann replies, "He said he had a lot of time to think." I'm so sorry. I don't even know what to say. Girl, me either. I've cried myself to sleep over a week now. So yeah, she was really going through it here. I said to him, you sat here in the living room and you said you think it would be great to have another baby. We talked it out a lot beforehand and we agreed to do this. You were so excited and happy. The friend replies, I think he will come to his senses. I grabbed his hand during ultrasound and he didn't grab back. I cringed. He rejected sex the night we arrived here. This was when they were in North Carolina and he came for the final week of the holiday. So what is he saying? He wants a divorce? WTF? He said he doesn't know and I'm not doing anything wrong. It's all him. I said, just like that. You're not trying to work it out. Divorce? He said, well, not like tomorrow. I don't know if I'll suck it up again and call his mum today, tape the call so she can't lie and twist my words and talk to her and tell her I want to have a relationship, but I need her to love and respect my kids. So even here we're seeing that Shanann was prepared to put out the olive branch. You know, she wanted to make things work for the sake of her marriage. She realized that this estrangement with the families couldn't go on. But it's really illuminating that she says here that she would tape it. So obviously, you know, she's used to them twisting and manipulating what she said. So she wanted to have some proof, and it's good that she actually documented that. And we can really kind of see what she was up against with that family. She's going on explaining more to her friends. He said we are not compatible anymore. He refused to hug me. He just said he will try to work it out. Said he thought another baby would fix his feelings. And he also said he refused couples counselling. That doesn't sound like Chris. Yes, he was just so cold. I have no idea what's happened. So basically, she just did not have a clue why he was behaving like this. She was so destroyed. She cancelled the gender reveal. She said to her friend, this baby in my belly deserves his full love either way. So it just got her doubting everything. So it must have been like being in a tumble dryer, just going round and round and round with all these emotions. So then she was saying to him, you know, asking him if there was anybody, and he said no, that the problem was his. She's cried herself to sleep over a week now. Yeah, this destruction of her. I mean, it was so intense, and it all happened within that 5-6 week period when she was in North Carolina. It's pretty horrific. Then on the day that Chris flew into North Carolina to spend the week with the family and the girls, Shanann was violently ill, and it was documented in the Discovery when Frankie, her brother, was interviewed. He spoke of it. She was violently sick. And what was noticeable is that Chris just totally ignored her and just went to bed. And Frankie Jr. got up in the night, and his sister was very sick, and she was also sleeping on the couch. So this kind of shows how callous this man really was. So he administered the oxy, made his wife seriously sick, had no clue what would happen to her, and just went off to bed and left her. She was out, you know, very, very sick all that evening. Yeah, so that was in the Discovery. Frank was explaining how Shanann would try to shield the family of any problems, but there were no, apart from Chris being very aloof towards Shanann and very off, there wasn't any obvious signs, and Shanann didn't speak of any huge breakdown. She didn't sort of divulge it to her family. I suppose she was just trying to work everything out. Just let me have a quick look at the messages here. Yeah, absolutely, Elizabeth. Yeah, I mean, he just doesn't have any empathy or emotion. He just doesn't seem to care about anything. Around the time of that final week, we had this surreal letter that Chris supposedly wrote, to whom it may concern. If anyone gets this letter, I would never do anything to hurt myself or my children or my wife. If anything happens to me, please investigate my wife, Chris Watts. So even here, he's starting the blame game. You know, he's more than happy to cast aspersions and blame onto his wife. He had already obviously discussed it with his family. They said that they knew that they were going to be getting separated. I mean, he hadn't told Shanann this, but he just told her he would work on it. But he was obviously working on it in a different way with his family. So here again, one thing to one person, another story to the next, this constant playing one side against the other. So, I mean, his family, Cindy was absolutely thrilled that he had finally seen the light, but he still hadn't told his actual wife. So, yeah, it goes to show how much that he was into this manipulation. Just after the famous, infamous Nutgate, Shanann had to host the third birthday for Cece, and she looked so amazingly happy that day. She was obviously determined to have a beautiful party for her little daughter. And there's this really sad photo of Shanann FaceTiming Chris so that he could be involved and witness, you know, his daughter's birthday. This was just after Nutgate, so obviously Cindy and Ronnie weren't there. Only half the family were there, really, which was so childish. And the only person who really suffered was the little 3-year-old girl who didn't see half her grandparents. So yeah, it kind of shows the kind of people. But here's Chris in the photo. Is you can see him, his face. I can't recognize the location. If any of you guys know where he was when he was FaceTiming on the third birthday, I'd love to know where he was that day. He was probably with NK. But yeah, so even then, you know, Shanann was still trying to keep him involved, keep him included. She'd had all this tension with the family, all this dreadful stress that upset her so much. But on that day, she really did create the most awesome little party for Cece, who seemed to be thoroughly enjoying herself. But imagine you've got this husband who's saying, "Love you, boo," and all of this kind of stuff in messages, and then totally blanking you and missing FaceTimes with his beloved daughters. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But he just didn't care. That's this hatred coming through to anybody, any woman in his firing line. We then go into just when they first got back from North Carolina. They had this really good conversation. Basically, Shanann was saying that Chris was more himself. He'd come back a little bit. This was just before she flew to Arizona. And she actually made a series of text messages to Ann Meadows, the real estate agent. And basically, this gives a really good insight, in my opinion, into what was actually going on, because many people think Shanann was in denial, that she knew they were going to be getting divorced, but she certainly didn't, because these messages, these really prove it. So she sent this on the August the 10th. "Hey love, how are you doing? Chris and I would like to talk to you about possibly selling the house. I'm out of town till late Sunday." So then Anne replies, "All right, where do you want to move?" So this is when you can really see the state of Shanann's mind at this precise moment. He's talking Brighton, possibly Fort Lupton, we can't move too far south because of his job. So thinking that area. We just talked about it all last night. And Meadows replies, you move fast. We had thought about it on and off, but the construction behind us was holding us back. They have a lot of it done now. But before I paint baby's room and more, I think it's better to see where we are at and options. So then Anne goes on to make some suggestions and recommends Brighton. So, you know, you can see here that it was a family move. It wasn't a home just for Shanann or a separation. She was talking about a family home that was good distance for Chris's work, and also she makes it more than clear she's talking about we, not I, you know. And then she's saying Chris, he's talking Brighton, possibly to Lupton. So she was taking his wishes and thoughts into consideration. There was no separation or talk of divorce in Shanann's mind on the 10th of August. Otherwise, why would she have made that series of messages to a real estate agent? Just catch up on your lessons here. Yeah. Chris Watts is an abuser and was always an abuser and continues on to this day. Hey, D Irish, great to see you. No, you're not late. So we're just catching up on Chris Watts, his treatment of all the women in his life, the outrageously disgusting way that he gaslighted and manipulated Shanann in those final 6 weeks, and his total disregard for his family, including his 2 daughters, who some days he didn't even bother to FaceTime. I mean, these 2 little innocent girls, you know, he couldn't even be bothered. And I was just talking about the real estate agent. Shanann was making an inquiry, and she was very much definitely talking about the family moving, not just her. She was making sure that it was close to Chris's work. One of I think the saddest things for me was Shanann really did not want to go on that final Thrive trip to Arizona. She was feeling really sick. It was a tough pregnancy. It was August, you know, the weather. She was feeling really tired. She wasn't feeling good. She'd had the oxy poisoning. She had all this gaslighting, this manipulation. She really, really didn't want to go. But Chris persuaded her because obviously he had his plans with NK and he needed to get her out of the house for that weekend. So one of the saddest things to me was the way that he played her so well. And that evening before she left, which would have been the Thursday evening, they had a good conversation. Chris allowed his wife to cuddle him, you know, because he'd obviously been so cold in all those preceding weeks. It just goes to show the way that he absolutely tried to destroy her. And here she was, not knowing what was going on. Why was he suddenly coming round? So in her text message, which I'm sure you will all remember, but I'm just going to read it because it's so heartbreaking. Good morning, honey. Sorry to make you wake up twice today. I didn't want alarm going off. We are checked in and everything. It's already a madhouse here today. Enjoy the girls. Don't forget King Supers, 10 to 11. I told Bella I was leaving for work with Nikki and assured her that I was always coming home. They don't usually eat right away lately. Give them lots of kisses for me. Thank you for everything last night. I miss and love you so much. I'm still in shock we are having a little boy. I'm so excited and happy. I really thought it was another girl. Thank you for letting me hold you this morning. It felt good. Your letter is on the counter. Have a great time with the kiddos. They truly missed you. Love you, baby. Send me pics. Okay. I mean, that letter is so heartbreaking. And sorry, that text is just so heartbreaking. And Chris actually deleted this from his phone. He actually deleted it. So that's how much regard he had for her. She was gone for the weekend and he was obviously so happy about this. But if you look deeply into that text message, she's constantly thinking of him. You know, she's saying how happy she is. I hope he has a great time with the children, how much the children have missed him. I mean, she's accused of all of these things, of being this selfish, obsessed person, but it doesn't ever come across in her messages. And these messages were private. This message to her husband was never meant to be public. These weren't on her Facebook. This was a private message. She also mentioned in the text that she'd left a letter, and we know that this letter ended up in the bin. So even if Chris read it, he certainly didn't absorb it or take much note of it. And it was just an expression of love, really, just my dearest Chris, saying how much she missed everything about him. I missed having you around when I felt alone and upset. I just flat out missed the hell out of you. I really don't know how we fell out of compatibility. The only major thing that happened was between your mum and I. I can't change what happened, but I will work with you and them to work things out. There has to be mutual respect from all parties. So, she was really, again, offering and suggesting that, of course, there could be a way out of this. I mean, if this had been a normal family, rifts and bust-ups happen in families. They would have all made up. I mean, even if it was just for once or twice a year, just to be civil to each other, or I'm sure Shanann would have allowed the grandparents to see the children, even if she didn't personally want to see them. But I think she would have been able to come around, as we see in so many other families all the time. But obviously, Chris had other ideas. That final weekend, Shanann's friends were so worried about her. She wasn't eating. She was sick. She wasn't hardly drinking. They were really worried about her, that she was going to get too dehydrated. I mean, we don't really know what long-term effects the oxy could have had on her body. I mean, she was constipated. She wasn't feeling good. I mean, she was really, really struggling with this pregnancy. So yeah, we just really don't know what could happen. And obviously we know that Chris had such blatant disregards that he used the joint credit card for the Lazy Dog dinner when he took out NK. So this was really Shanann's first kind of concrete proof, like the biggest red flag that something was really going on, because she discussed it with her girlfriends at the final meal when they were all in Arizona together. And she was obviously going to come home and speak to Chris, confront him about it, because it didn't make sense. They checked the menu and the cost. It was way more than one person for a salmon dinner and a beer. It was quite obvious it was a bill for two people. So you can see here that Chris just does not care. He knows that they have money issues, and he just isn't bothered that Shanann is going to find out. It's a very cowardly way to let your wife know that something is going on, instead of having the guts when she asked him weeks ago. I mean, she could have stayed in North Carolina and been safe. I mean, her mother asked her to stay. She could have stayed there. So he lured her home, really, with the promises that he was going to work on it. So then we know the horrendous sequence of events when Shanann came back from Arizona. Obviously, we've heard so many different variations from Chris. But one thing that I found so interesting was the way Chris totally underestimated Shanann's friends and the lengths they would go to make sure that she was okay. So we all know, because it was in the Netflix documentary about Nicole Atkinson, and obviously the whole welfare check and calling the police. But what it was a little bit less obvious was Shanann's other great friend, Cassie. She actually made contact with Chris. And I absolutely love these text messages. So I'm going to just read them out to you, because this absolutely made my day when I read this. So this is from Cassie to Chris. This is Cassie. Shanann is in a very bad way emotionally, and I'm worried about her. This was on Monday, the 13th, at around 11:45 in the morning. I know you are having issues, but I don't know to what extent. But I do know I have never seen her so broken to an extent that I am worried. Chris replies, she went to a friend's house with the kids. She won't tell me where, though. When I get home, I will update you. Cassie replies, sweetie, nobody knows about you and her other than Nikki and I. So where would she go if not with Nikki and not to Arizona where I'm at? Her car and shoes are, and everything is at the house. What the heck is going on with you guys that she would totally shut out everything? It's not like her. So then Chris responds, I told Nikki all about it so she wouldn't freak out anymore at the house. I think Christina knows as well. We talked last night and I told her I wanted to sell the house, get something smaller. Separation would be best right now if we can work through the issues. I really don't want you to think I'm a bad person, Cassie. This is after he had just slaughtered his whole family. I love Cassie's reply. Right now, I don't care about you or your relationship or what type of person you are or not, or what I think of you. And I'm not trying to be rude when I say that. Right now, I'm worried about your damn wife and her well-being. Nikki is calling the police, period. She is broken emotionally. Her blood sugar dropped due to not eating, and it could cause her to pass out. So unless you want the police to bust your damn door down, you get home and check on your family. I'm sorry if I'm being rude or whatever, but I'm seriously concerned. I'm going home now, Cassie, on my way. Don't call the police. I will be there in 45 minutes. She replies, thank you. Nikki and I know what state she was in all weekend, and we want to see that she isn't in the house because this is seriously a concern. So how unbelievable that he tells them not to call the police. They've explained why they're so worried. He doesn't offer any reassurance. He just says that she's gone off on a play date. He doesn't even know where. And his two daughters, you would think he'd be concerned about his daughters, not knowing where they are, where his wife is after an emotional conversation, after he told her they were separating. And to think that he's concerned that I really don't want you to think I'm a bad person, Cassie. So even on that day, he's still concerned about what people think of him. He just forced his two little daughters into oil tanks, and here he is saying, I hope you don't think I'm a bad person, Cassie. So yeah, we know what went down. Obviously the law enforcement came and they checked the house. They went to the neighbor, and Chris Watts, that famous hands on his head when he saw the cam footage of him backing in the drive in the early hours of the 13th when he was loading his truck. And basically that really, really surreal moment when the fetus comes onto the TV screen and he suddenly turns to law enforcement and said, oh yes, she was pregnant. You know, his wife was pregnant. He hadn't thought to mention that before. Again, just his total disconnect, his total disregard for his family was just so apparent to everybody. You could just see that something extremely strange was going on with this man. Let me just quickly catch up on the comments here. Yeah, it was just exactly, love wins. Being that good at hiding his true self is terrifying. I pray to never meet someone like him. Yeah, D-Irish. Anyone that's been in a narcissistic, abusive relationship will understand the pain and confusion of the discard phase. It becomes physically painful too. Imagine being pregnant on top of that. Wow, yeah. Yeah, imagine, yeah. Kat, such a good point. He couldn't believe she was so loved. Even now, I think he comes out because he hates that people just love her. I never met her, but she was amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. She had a lot to put up with that family. Yeah, such a good point, Kat. If you watch that video without sound, just by body language, you would think Nate was the father. Yeah, for the little regard he's showing your family, absolutely. What really disgusted me as well when we found out more about this case was the whole disposal of his family, the way that he just tossed Shanann in the grave. You know, there was no dignity there. I mean, why couldn't he just leave her wrapped in the sheet? She was in the bed sheet, which was found flustering around the work site around Surrey. Why couldn't he have just given her that last bit of dignity? Why did he hate her so much that her semi-naked posterior was left sticking out and just a few scraps of mud thrown over her? He could have just left her wrapped and given her that, but no, his hatred shone through that day. I mean, he broke the rake in his anger or his frustration or his happiness, whatever he was feeling that day. I'm not quite sure if he understands emotions, but yeah, I've always been so troubled by that. And then obviously the way that he disposed of his daughters, I mean, is just, I think it's the most shocking thing I've ever heard. He's supposed to be the protector. My daddy is my hero, and I don't want to make it sound worse than it already is. It's already worse than any horror story. But I do believe that things are as bad as some of the rumored things that he's sort of admitted to some people. I do think it was really really horrendous, because he despised his children by that stage. They were starting to pick up on it. Imagine the tension in the house in those final weeks when he was literally ignoring his wife. I mean, Bella was old enough to have really picked up on it, and I think that she would have seen her mother literally broken. A young little girl who was so sensitive, she would definitely have picked up on it. And I'm sure that she would comfort her, her mother, and Chris would start to really despise them all. He wanted them all gone. There's no getting away from that. Yeah, love wins. The latest rumor is he's saying a hitman killed them all. Oh my goodness, yeah. Liz Stewart, one of the fangirls, said he put them in the oil to preserve them. Yeah, I think KK, Kim Kaufman, said that it was like putting the girls upstairs to bed, a safe place for them. No, sorry, I don't know any bed that you have to force the little girls through 8-inch holes. So yeah, I'm sorry, Chris Watts, I'm not falling for that one. The thing that was really surprising was obviously Chris went in for his first chat with law enforcement, and then the next day they had asked him to take the polygraph. So he phoned home and requested his dad to fly in to accompany him to the station to have this polygram. If you think about it, this really shows Chris's total disregard for his mother, because he knew what was going to go down that day. He knew that law enforcement were onto him. He knew that they weren't just going to let him go. So his mum was back at home, separated from her husband. She would find out what had really happened to her granddaughters and her daughter-in-law in a phone call. No husband to comfort her. So Chris had isolated his mother. Probably some of the darkest, most horrific news that she's ever going to hear, and she has to hear it via a phone call instead of being with her husband, being there to hear it herself. To have that secondhand news must have been really quite hideous to hear it in that way. I really do believe deep down Chris Watts absolutely despises Cindy. I think that he has never felt good enough. She puts him on this pedestal. She tells him how much she loves him, but when he was a free man, she certainly did not love him in the way that a normal mother would. There were conditions when he was a free man. She didn't attend the wedding. She didn't speak to him for months. They fell out. She didn't attend his daughter's birthday. We love you no matter what only seems to work when he's banged up in prison. So yeah, I think he deep down really, really resents his mother. And I would never be surprised if Cindy Watts is removed from his visitor list. I think that would be the ultimate revenge. So yeah, I would never be surprised if that happens. When you think about those tanks, I mean, really, he punished his daughters in the most barbaric way. I really believe they were starting to see through him, as I said, especially Bella. And I'm sure that she would have been traumatized by what was going on between the parents. She was definitely old enough to pick up on it. When you go back to sentencing and you see this sad, grey, insignificant little man slumped in his chair, his whole world destroyed, facing a life sentence of some degree. He's sitting there. It's just such an insignificant little man. I just keep looking at those photos when he was in the orange prison uniform. Yeah, he just sits there, hardly any emotion. I think any tears were for himself. One of the worst things in this whole case has been all the mind games with the different confessions, how he just literally adds barbaric detail after barbaric detail. Each time, imagine the pain and upset for the Rzucek family, especially Sandra. I kind of feel that Chris Watts has specifically targeted her because one thing about Sandy, she has been fortified by her religion. I mean, it's definitely sustained her. And she said without it, she doesn't think she would have got through this. You know, she's very spiritual. And then for Chris Watts to state publicly that he's found God, and not only has he found God, but God has forgiven him, and he has a special, unique path just for Chris Watts. It must be such a slap in the face for such a religious person as Sandy, that he has this special relationship with his God. I'm not kind of quite sure what religion Chris Watts is following, but I thought lying was a definite no-no. But yeah, these confessions, I mean, we still don't really know the truth. I mean, there's all these new theories and none of them really stack up. I do believe that the Dodge confession is probably as close to the truth as we're going to get. And without being macabre, I do think it was awful and worse than he's admitted, because deep down he hates being disliked. So I'm sure he's held some stuff back. When you look at the ongoing treatment of women in Chris Watts' world, one of the most macabre is the musical chairs of his visitor list. Okay, so these women, these pen pals, they write to him, they become the chosen one, they become a flying monkey to spread the word. We've had so many people like Anna who were spat out and disregarded. We had the family friend Shannon. Her name is Shannon Hart, not getting mixed up with Shannon. And also we've had the extreme version, which would be Kim Kaufman, who befriended the family from day one and then obviously became the official spokesperson. Chris Watts even went on a live that she taped from Dodge and stated that we should only listen to him, only listen to Kim. And as we know, she believes that Shanann killed the children, and Chris was publicly backing that. And we saw those awful reenactment videos on her YouTube channel and all of her data and rumors and her opinion that she tries to fit to the discovery by cherry picking it. But I mean, yeah, I mean, he endorsed her and got the family to endorse her. So that was another level of hate for Shanann. When we look at letters from Christopher, which was an extreme pen pal situation with Sherilyn Cadle. So she actually got the letters that she then published in the book. And this is when Chris goes into his most horrendous detail. And it's somehow worse seeing it in print, and the way that he literally trashes his wife's memory. He loved the gruesome detail, and when you think about it, he's only trying to humiliate his wife even more. The way that he describes her relieving herself, the foul smell that the children picked up on when they were driving to Survey with the dead Shanann in the base of the truck and the two children sitting above. The way that she had black tears running down her face, that she put up no fight whatsoever, and that he thought she was praying. But when you think about it, that is such a punch in the face, because even God didn't save her. God didn't stop what was happening. So he's showing his absolute hatred for Shanann with these confessions. The way that he just tossed her in the grave, he said he didn't even care how she ended up. And as I've mentioned before, he removed the sheet. There's no need to remove the sheet. She was semi-naked. He could have given her some dignity, but he didn't want to give her any dignity. He wanted to humiliate her. And this is how deep his hatred goes of his wife. Basically, we've spoken about the way that he manipulates his family and women, how he manipulates the situation. When it goes back to Nutgate, Chris was sort of being quite sympathetic to Shanann's situation. And in one of the messages, he said, that he should have called his father and before it got to this awful point, and they should have swallowed whatever they needed, and they should have come to Cece's birthday party. And he then went on to tell his mother that he was done with Shanann. So he was again playing the two sides. So you can see here how Shanann really had no loyalty from her husband. She couldn't trust him because he would be running with a different story to his mother. And I'm sure this went on throughout the whole marriage. And that's why they had such an awful relationship, because he was poisoning both sides. He didn't want them to get on because obviously he would feel threatened by that. He feels very threatened by strong women. and two strong women together. He never could allow them to be friends. You know, he needed to cause that divide. He actually told a friend that Cindy called him crying after the Nutgate fight, and Watts told her, "Don't worry, because I'm done with Shanann." So yeah, he was definitely playing all sides in that situation. When we think about Cindy, I mean, as you guys know, I'm not a fan of her whatsoever, but she's still locked into her son's manipulations. He's got such disrespect for her that he hasn't actually looked her in the eye and told her the truth of what actually happened. She said to him, "I just ask one day you tell us the truth." Chris Watts replied, "One day, just not today." So he's been mind screwing his mother for 2.5 years. And I know that he's written it in letters and he's given his different confessions. But at the end of the day, deep down, she still believes his first ever Shanann killed the girls law enforcement confession. So she really needs to hear it from him. He needs to get her in for a visit and sit her down and tell her the absolute truth so she could finally start to process what's happened. Because although he's told everybody else, he's never actually had the guts to tell his mother. Let's just catch up on the yeah. 100%, yeah. Just reading through. He tried to humiliate Shanann even when police asked, "Did she go for walks?" She said, "No, she doesn't." Yeah, he joked about her dressing up in her fitness gear and then taking a photo and then going, you know, taking it off and not doing the run. He was always out to make her look like a fool. Okay, so where are we, guys? With this, just 1 second. Yeah, so as I said, no sympathy whatsoever for Cindy, but yeah, she still needs to hear it from him instead of reading it in a book, or because every time there is a confession, there's always something very dodgy going on. I mean, you know, Sherilyn has been discredited. There was the whole plagiarism, and you know, she added some extra to some of the letters when we compared them to the originals. So probably, I think even more so, that's why Cindy needs to hear it from her own son herself. One of the most important aspects of the discovery for me was Shanann's mother, Sandy, wrote a letter just explaining all of the backstory. And I did find it really interesting because we're not just hearing this now from Shanann, but we're actually hearing it from her mother. So she described the dynamic between the families, talking about how they first met, Chris and Shanann. She said that a friend told her about a cousin, Chris, saying he's a very nice guy, quiet, etc. And then Shanann got a request from him on Facebook. Months later, she called me saying, "Mom, I met a nice guy. He is a mechanic." I said, "As long as you are happy and he is good to you." And then she talks about the first big cookouts they had when they met Chris's family and how that wasn't a very good meetup. Going on talking about the engagement party. So it's all things that we know from Shanann's side as well. That what went down, totally contradicting what the Watts have been feeding everybody with their version of events. Then we go on to just reading through the letter. I mean, Sandy knew about their debt problem, and obviously there was a lot of surgery in the family, and they had about £25,000 worth of bills for surgery and debts like this. And she spoke about how her and her husband moved in with with Shanann and Chris for a while to help them. They were there for about 15 months. So it's all documented in that letter, which I found really, really interesting. She goes on to talk about some really strange things when Chris came to North Carolina for the holiday. She says that just before Shanann came to North Carolina, Celeste had a rash in her private area. Anyway, Chris had the phone and she was asking to sort of see the rash, and he inappropriately put it over Celeste's private parts. And, you know, Sandy thought this was really, really, really inappropriate. She also noted that going on from about May, Chris was acting really strangely when they would have their very regular nightly FaceTime. He would be putting Sandy says here, when we FaceTimed, Chris was putting the phone all over the room, the ceiling, the floors, etc. I said, Chris, are you all right? Then he would FaceTime normally. So yeah, so there's something going on that she picked up on back in May 2018. She talks about the trip. Shanann wanted to come for 6 weeks this summer so she could introduce the girls to Chris's sister Jamie, who had never met Celeste, and also Uncle Frankie, our son, before the year started back to school, dance classes, etc. So she went on to say that Chris was acting really weird to Shanann. He didn't have time to speak to her, and then he was going to go and visit his family. Shanann and Chris spoke on our porch for a few hours about the peanut stuff and what happened at his mum's house. Chris was so distant, Shanann. He was okay with the girls and with us. Shanann was vomiting all night, and Chris didn't even get up to see how this was. And this was his wife. So yeah, so, you know, not only Shanann herself in her text messages, but her brother confirms how sick she was, and her own mother confirms how sick she was, and that Chris didn't attend to her, didn't look out for her. So he just had no regard for her whatsoever by this point. Chris was very quiet, doing his own thing and ignoring Shanann. I said to my daughter, is everything okay? And she just said, Chris is being Chris. So we were at the beach and we went to dinner, and Chris drove Shanann and the girls, and I drove behind them. I was doing 83 miles an hour to catch up to them. And I text Shanann, why is he driving like that? Tell him to slow down. I'm not in a race to go to dinner. At dinner, Chris left the table quite a few times. He was very silent. He was ignoring his kids and his wife. Cece was being funny, and he just walked away again. I left the next day. I asked Shanann to stay here with the girls, and she said Chris had good insurance, and that's why they went back to Colorado. And she ends the letter, I'm devastated. And then this is the saddest line. P.S. The only reason Chris got fit was because diabetes runs high in his family, and Shanann wanted him to live forever. It's just so sad. That letter always gets me. So guys, that's kind of my thoughts on Chris Watts. He's just so cowardly. He took the most horrific course of action, destroying his whole family. He still is playing his games. He's manipulating people. I mean, we have Lana, the very latest, who's his official spokesperson. 1 minute there's going to be a 35C, then he pulls the plug on it. Now there's these ridiculous rumors that Chris is saying that he was never involved in any of it, and that it was all a hit job by a hitman or something. Again, trying to embarrass Shanann, talking about her owing money to her old boss. People are talking about she had breast implants. There's all these horrific rumors. He just loves it. Anything to shame his wife. Anything. She's dead, and still he can't let her rest. Imagine how it is for her family, you know. I'm so happy to see that Sandy is trying to be so positive. There's this horrendous narrative coming out from the Watts, and there always has been, especially from this dreadful killer. And we've got lovely Sandy, you know, with her YouTube cookery show. They're absolutely wonderful. If you haven't seen them, I really highly suggest you get a moment to watch. She's really trying to work through this. She has her faith and she has her cooking, and she wants to try to help people. She's even talking of probably having a cookbook. So I'll leave a link in the description of this video, because yeah, I want to sort of concentrate on that part of this dreadful case, the good, instead of these dreadful rumors that he keeps churning out. I just want to catch up with you in the yeah, D Irish. I love Sandra Rzucek. Me too. She's amazing. Yeah, Chris has no clue what it's truly to be truly dedicated to the Bible and God. Liz Stewart, this is so true. He has to be constantly the center of attention. He will come up with a story every year that he needs to be in the forefront of everybody's minds. He constantly wants to churn every detail up. Yeah, Cindy mostly controlled these women in Chris's life, and she still got control over him. I mean, I just think it's just the fakeness with her that I can't get over, you know, that she said, we love you no matter what. Well, you didn't love him when he was a married man. You didn't respect any of his wishes. I mean, you know, it's quite surreal that you didn't attend his wedding, and now you're saying that you would do anything for him. It's a bit late, you know. He's banged up in prison 22 hours a day or whatever. Just have one last look through these. Yeah, it's all a big game to him, Liz Stewart. I agree with you. They spoke, didn't they, of two Chris's. I mean, he was trying to. He really thought that being nice would get him off. You know, anybody will tell you that I'm not that kind of guy. I would never harm my daughters. But you did, Chris. You did. And at the end of the day, we see that footage when he marks the drone photo with the 3 initials. I mean, he knew where the bodies were. He didn't have to think about it. He knew exactly where they were. He asked, when was this drone photo taken? They said today. So, because the drone had already flown over the work site, obviously. And he got his pen and he marked, you know, the S, the C, and the B. So he definitely knew, because law enforcement had no clue where the bodies were at that stage. They actually doubted that they would be inside those tanks because of the tiny hatch opening. So yeah, I don't think we'll ever understand this man, but he definitely hates very deeply. I think he feels just so inadequate, and this is the way that he can feel some power, by totally belittling people, humiliating them, and the big thing is this destabilizing them. We've seen it with all the pen pals. He feeds different narratives to different people. The Shannon Hart, she was so traumatized by his confessions that she had to break contact. I mean, he went into horrific detail with her. So yeah, he loves to destabilize. That's his MO, as they would call it. Well, guys, thank you so much. Sorry, it's just run over a little bit over the hour. I'm so grateful to you all for spending time going over this. Is really so sad when you look at all these texts and messages, and just imagine what Shanann went through in those final weeks. She really did try everything, even self-help books. She tried every single thing, but he was done with his whole family. It's just so sad. It's so hard to understand any of it. Just reading through these final comments. D Irish. Yeah. His hate truly is towards his mother. 99% of men that murder women have mother issues. So Liz, with regard to Shannon Hart, it was actually an interview with Armchair Detective. I don't actually normally watch him, but a friend recommended it, and basically, I think it was in a telephone call when she was speaking to Chris, and this is when he first told her about CC and Bella, and when he smothered them for the first time, and he spoke of CC not really being 100% herself because the children woke up, because I think that he obviously, hope to goodness, has never smothered anybody before, so they were unconscious but they weren't actually passed. So when they woke up, they were extremely, well, he said that, you know, Bella, she had markings on her face, and poor little CC, it was probably due to lack of oxygen to the brain, and she was very out of it. But he went into quite graphic detail with the phone call to Shannon Hart, and yeah, she said that she just literally couldn't take it. I think she had to break contact, but it was definitely Armchair Detective a few months ago. But she's totally out of the picture now, I believe. She's not having anything to do with the family. Yeah. Law enforcement asked, why was he so angry with Shanann? Chris said the fact his parents were not at the wedding and the Nutgate incident. Yes, Cindy does not care. She said that she doesn't care what he's done. She doesn't care. You know, she couldn't stand Shanann. She's just collateral damage. I'm so shocked that she seems to have such disregard for her granddaughters, but you can never get my head around that. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time. Hope we can all chat again soon. It's just trying to get a bit of a deeper feel of this strange little man, this inadequate little man. But I think we're all on the same page here. I thank you for your time and look forward to chatting with all of you very soon. I'm going to make the next live about NK, a bit of a deep dive into her. Okay, have a wonderful evening, day, whatever time zone you're in. It's just after 11, nearly 11:15 here in the UK. So thanks for everything, and chat to you guys soon. Take good care now. Bye.